Welcome everyone. In my quest to make a video on every boss in old school RuneScape, we've arrived at the Thermonuclear Smoke Devil, aka Thermy. This guide will be covering all combat achievements, starting with everything you need to get the general KC requirements, followed by an easy method to get the other two tasks completed. As far as requirements for this boss go, 93 Slayer is a hard requirement and cannot be boosted. I would recommend base 80s in your melee and then 70 prayer for access to piety. Additionally, you'll want 70 range in order to wear Carol's armor. Or you can take the magic route with at least 75, though having 82 for access to Ice Blitz is recommended. In order to get to Thermy, there are two primary routes. The first is quicker and is starting from fairy code BKB and running over to the cave entrance. Or you can start from the Castle Wars teleport via the Ring of Dueling. Make sure you're wearing your Slayer helm before entering the area to avoid the effect. Now once inside, you'll see this gray smoke stuff on your screen, but if you'd like, you can remove this by right-clicking the smoke outside the cave entrance and then toggling the option. Now on to mechanics. Thermy has a max hit of 8, but despite this, you will take quite a bit of damage for two reasons. First is that it attacks very fast, once every 2 game ticks or every 1.6 seconds. To give you an idea, the whip attacks every 4 ticks, so Thermy attacks twice as fast as a whip. Secondly, it has a typeless magical ranged attack, meaning that protection prayers do nothing. The only thing you can do is increase your character's defense bonus through gear. As for its defenses, it's quite weak to just about everything in melee, but there's a slight advantage for slash weapons. It's also weak to magic, but it is quite strong against range attacks, making either magic or melee the suitable choices here. Also keep in mind that Thermy is immune to poison damage, so the Tentacle Whip, the Poison Dragon Dagger, and even the Blowpipe have no additional effects here. Now let's start with everything we'll need for a magic setup. Obviously I have a Slayer Helm, I bring an Imbued God Cape, an Occult Necklace, Radha's Blessing 4, Mage Book. Now an alternative to a Mage Book includes either the Book of Darkness or a Malediction Ward, and of course an upgrade from here is going to be the Arcane Spirit Shield. Now I like to bring the Mage's Book as it provides a plus 15 to both attack and defense on magic. Other than that, I bring an Arab's top and bottom. Upgrades would be Ancestral, downgrades would be Mystics. I bring Eternals and a Tormented Bracelet. Now here I have the Toxic Trident. I also have the Sanguinesti Staff. Better than either of these will be a Harmonized Orb Staff, and it's really not worth downgrading from here. Now, your best in slot ring is going to be the Ring of Suffering imbued with an active recoil effect, as this will do more damage and DPS than any other ring we can bring. Next up, we have our inventory. I like to bring a prayer potion in order to prayer flick Augury. It's not the most important thing in the world, but sometimes I get lazy and I'll run out of prayer. But as long as you're active, or even if you don't use it, you won't need this prayer potion. Augury makes a slight difference, but it's not a real game changer. I also like to bring an anglerfish to pre-eat before the fight, so I have a guaranteed 1 free inventory space at the end of the kill. Other than that, I load up on sharks, I bring an explorer's ring, teleport tablets, and runes to cast Ice Blitz. Now I use Ice Blitz as it is a single target spell, meaning it will not splash and aggro any of the smoke devils within the dungeon, which is quite useful. Now if you don't have 82, you can always downgrade for the weaker version Ice Rush with Chaos Runes. Now as far as melee goes, of course we'll be taking the Slayer Helmet, a Fire Cape, Amulet of Torture. I have a Radha's Blessing 4 still, but any will do. I use a Tentacle Whip. A nice substitute for very similar DPS would be the Gazai Rapier. Although expensive, it does have the added benefit that it doesn't decay. Now better than either of these is going to be a Blade of Salvador, an Inquisitor's Mace, and of course a Scythe. From there I also take the Ferocious Gloves, but you're more than welcome to take Barras. I have Prims. You can downgrade here to either Dragon Boots or something else that's a bit more defensive if you'd like. I have Carol's top and bottom to help us with that magic defense. Now, if you bring Claws as your spec weapon, you will want to bring a Bandos Chestplate top to use while you spec the boss. Best in slot is still going to be the Ring of Suffering imbued for that recoil effect. For inventory, I prefer the Saradomin Godsword as my spec weapon of choice, which we'll discuss more in the redemption section of this video. I take 2 Super Divine Combats, 1 Angler again to help free up space in my inventory, as juggling supplies and drops in the beginning can get a bit tedious. From there, I load up on Prayer Potions, an Explorer's Ring for Alks, House Teleport, and everything I need in order to cast Greater Resurrect Thralls. Now over here for magic, I have 1 tile marked in green here, which is in order to show Thermy's spawn. All the way at the back, straight at the wall, I have 5 tiles marked. 1 through 5 straight up. The reason for this is as Thermy attacks, we'll be freezing, taking 1 step back in order to avoid some of the damage that it's doing. Just make sure that for this method, you have your staff on long range or this method won't work. Your first kill will likely be a bit scuffed since Thermy won't be in position, but the idea is simple. Stand on the first red tile and freeze Thermy as soon as it spawns. From here, with your staff on long range, you'll be out of Thermy's attack distance. Now with this method, you'll still take some damage. I find that Thermy usually gets at least a couple of attacks off after it unfreezes, followed by another couple of attacks after you hit it. So if you're quick, that's about 4 attacks before you're back to safety. Of course, freezes can splash, which means you'll end up taking more hits here and there. But once you see the EXP drop from the freeze attack, move back a tile and keep attacking from a safe distance. Now as for the combat achievements, I will say it took over 200 KC to get a single magic kill without taking any damage, which is more than a single task. So it's possible to get hazard prevention through magic, it just doesn't seem that likely, but hey, maybe your RNG will be better than mine. Now for melee, you've got 2 options. The first is simpler, and that's just praying Redemption and Piety until the prayer procs. So Redemption activates once you're below 10 HP, and in my case, that's 9 HP at level 99 hit points. It'll drain the rest of your prayer and heals you for 25% of your prayer level. So at level 85 prayer, which is what I have, that gives me 21 HP. At 70 prayer, that gives 17 HP. So this method lets you stay at Thermy for a lot of kills since each prayer dose is essentially 20 HP and you have 4 per inventory slot. However, you do take a lot of damage with this method since Thermy is using magic attacks and very often. That said, despite the prayer consumption, this boss is still profitable. It's not great GP, but you're not losing money as long as you're not using a scythe. So if you're using a tentacle whip or a rapier, the Gear Discord recommends using this method for the DPS increase provided by the Ring of Suffering. The second option, Flinching, you can also combine with the Redemption method. But basically, by clicking behind Thermy, it will stop attacking you as you get closer to it. So overall, you take about a third less damage, and your Redemptions will proc slower, and thus help you extend your trips even further. So to do this, simply click behind Thermy. After your character takes a couple steps, click back on the boss. Thermy will kind of dance around the room a bit, but the strategy overall is pretty simple. So because you attack every 4 ticks, to avoid wasting time, you can click behind the boss, and after you walk 2 squares, click back on the boss, and then when the attack animation starts for your character, you click behind Thermy again and just keep repeating this dance until you leave. To help with this, you could turn on the setting Show True Tile found under the tile indicator settings on RuneLite. There's a slight difference between where you see your character and where the game sees your character, so this plugin just makes that visible. I don't personally use it, but it can help. The main point here is to try and not waste too much time under the boss so you can keep killing it quickly. Whether or not you use the plugin though is completely up to you. Now it's time to move on to Thralls. This is perhaps the best place to use them out of anywhere in the game because the prayer cost associated with them is basically null due to the Redemption proc. So I find one cast lasts me about 1.5 to 2 kills on Thermy. Each cast is 6 prayer points, but if you lose 6 prayer points and the Redemption procs before you run out of prayer, then you aren't losing any additional prayer points at all by using this spell. Since you're killing Thermy quickly, one cast every 2 kills isn't even that expensive. So in my opinion, it's a top tier spell if you want to melee here. And they also really help speed up your kills. Now, as for the SGS, the Saradomin Godsword, let's say you hit a good spec and get somewhere between 20 and 30 HP. That's equivalent, if not more than what you would get by being healed from the Redemption. So for every good spec you land, that's pretty much equal to a prayer pot dose. So here, more than anywhere else, I feel like it's a really good tool to extend your trips, which is why I bring it. For a final note on the arceuus spellbook, I want to take a second to talk about Death Charge. This one is more debatable in terms of its use to me. While it will help you spec more often, you need 2 inventory spaces for it when combined with Thralls. Now, because of the fast kills, you really only get to cast this once every 2 kills, because it has a 1-minute cooldown. So while it helps, you're only getting a 15% spec restore at half the rate you're killing the boss. So I'm really not sure that it's worth taking this over, say, another 2 prayer pots. Now that the KC task is out of the way, we can discuss the other 2, hazard prevention and specced out. Lucky for you, we're doing both at the same time. I mentioned the first one a bit, but basically you have to kill the boss without taking any damage from it. And for the second, you have to kill it using only spec weapons. For this, the best option is going to be Dragon Claws, followed by a Dragon Dagger or a Crystal Halberd. If you have it, you can also consider bringing a Bando's Godsword and speccing it once or twice to lower the defense, though I didn't do that. Just remember, this boss is immune to poison damage, so neither the Blowpipe or the Dragon Dagger will do anything special. In all honesty, the hardest part here is just finding a free world that doesn't get interrupted. Alternatively, you can drop all of your specs on Thermy before teleporting out, but you'll likely take damage. But if you're just just going for specced out and not hazard prevention, then this will be a quicker way of doing it. To get a kill without taking any damage, however, this is going to be the best method. So basically you're going to be doing the POH method, but on rapid fire. So once you're in the boss room, turn on Piety and your spec energy, drink a super combat, and attack the boss. Once you see the EXP drop or the attack animation begin, quickly teleport out and drink from the pool to restore your spec, and then run back either through a fairy ring or the dueling ring. As long as you're quick, you'll avoid all damage.